there's a guy in the super middleweight division who I believe that we are genuinely all forgetting about. Genuinely. I view him as a top fighter. I'm huge on James Degale. Andre Ward is obviously a pound for pound superstar, despite inactivity. But this guy is a guy who I believe could genuinely give both of those guys problems. His name is Andre Dirrell. He fought this weekend against Derek Edwards in a very, very one-sided fight. I haven't done a post-fight reaction to it, but pretty much Dirrell wins every single round, uses boxing ability, doesn't go for the stoppage. You know, it's technical stuff. It's stuff that may not be overly appealing to the casual fan. But I am a huge fan of Dirrell. That Frotz fight is interesting. I'm not saying he deserved to win that fight. I think that fight I see more as like a draw, because I think Frotz did come on late, and I think Dirrell's activity dropped towards the end of the fight. And he is one of those fighters who has that sort of problem, you know, punching output, punching activity, etc. But the guy has got an exceptional jab, exceptional movement, you know, great sort of amateur pedigree. I've found myself watching the sparring footage of Andre Dirrell and Jaylon Love 4 or 5 times, and if anyone hasn't seen that footage, I'd strongly recommend you to look up Jaylon Love versus Andre Dirrell sparring. This is a real talent. Now, he's had his problems. I understand he was signed to 50 Cent's promotional banner and has suffered hugely with inactivity. I understand he might have had some issues after the Arthur Abraham fight physically. But for whatever reason, he's back. He's being active. You know, he's fought 3 times in the second half of 2014. And he looks like he's not too old. I think he's 31 or something. And he looks in sort of peak physical condition. Now, the reason I think British fans in particular need to take a huge interest in Andre Dirrell is there's been a lot of talk recently about the rise of James Degale, how deadly James Degale is, how we expect James Degale to be a world champion. There's been talk in certain quarters, including myself, that James Degale would beat George Groves and Carl Frotz, and that he could be the top British super middleweight. There's been talk further afield that James Degale is now a top pound for pound fighter. I feel that's premature, but either way, a superb talent. Now, what people need to understand is that Andre Dirrell is the IBF number 2 rated super middleweight. Should Carl Frotz vacate his title, as I understand it, the IBF will order a fight for the vacant title between James Degale and Andre Dirrell. Now, believe me when I say that is not going to be an easy walk in the park for James Degale. You know, stylistically, there are quite a lot of similarities between these two guys. They've both got good movement. They've both got good outside game. They've both got that sort of technical amateur pedigree. Certain attributes that James Degale has, you know, maybe James Degale is slightly better on the inside. Maybe James Degale has better power, possibly better body work. But Andre Dirrell, to my eye, has the edge in terms of a jab. Both guys have got, you know, seemingly got very, very good chins, good durability. I understand Dirrell, you know, won against Arthur Abraham via disqualification. But you know, I don't take that as an indication he's got a poor chin. And this is a guy who's went the distance with the likes of Carl Frotz. You know, clearly they're both durable guys, etc. I think there's a lot of similarities stylistically between the two. And whilst I say that James Degale, I'd possibly give a slight edge to in that fight. It would be a very, very slight edge. One of the sort of bizarre things, these are the two guys who I actually think are the only two capable of giving Andre Ward a fight. Andre Dirrell and James Degale, neither of them are new to the scene. Neither of them are fighters who've just turned pro, just won a medal. You know, these are guys who've been around for a very, very long time. But let me say, if either of those guys fought Carl Froch today, if either of those guys fought Arthur Abraham, Robert Stieglitz, Mikhail Kessler, Anthony Dirrell, George Groves, I'd be picking either of them, Degale or Dirrell, over that list of opposition. And I'd be prepared to say it's pretty 50-50 in a Andre Dirrell-Andre Ward fight, or a James Degale-Andre Ward fight. I think these guys bring advanced technical capability to the game, combined with explosiveness, movement. Stylistically, I really, really like both of their chances against Andre Ward. Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm not committing that I'd pick both of them against Andre Ward, but I'd at least say that they'd give him the most competitive fights. And for my eyes, those three are the top three in the division: Ward, Andre Dirrell, and James Degale. Now, as I say, bizarre situation whereby, even though I and others view these guys as the very, very top of the division, we have a situation where you've got guys like Arthur Abraham, like Anthony Dirrell, who are probably generally lower regarded super middleweights, who are currently carrying the belts. But as I say, as a fan of the British scene in particular, we've got to be aware of Andre Dirrell. We've got to be aware of him, because there's this sort of assumption that James Degale will get a world title. I know there's some discussion now that maybe he'll fight George Groves rather than fighting for a world title next, and you know, that would be quite telling if it was the case. That would suggest to me that Eddie Hearner's very, very aware of Dirrell, because to me Dirrell is a huge risk with little reward. He's not going to be a pay-per-view star. He's not a fan-friendly fighter. He's not a huge name. But to me, he's a very, very dangerous fighter. And if anyone doubts that, please watch the first few rounds, or even round one, of the Carl Froch Andre Dirrell fight, and see the snap in his jab, see the movement. Please have a look at the Andre Dirrell versus Jalen Love sparring footage. You know, see how strong he is, see how powerful he is. This guy is a match for anyone out there. The only time he's lost, I believe, you know, was that very controversial loss against Carl Froch. We saw him pretty much school Arthur Abraham for the majority of their fight. Very, very advanced fighter. Won a one-sided fight against Derek Edwards, who we saw KO Badu Jack in one round recently. And it's unfortunate that James Degale versus Andre Dirrell isn't a unification match, and we're talking about it for a vacant title, because my understanding is that these guys are at the very, very top of the sport. Let's not forget Andre Dirrell. Let me hear your thoughts on him.